I never thought my life would turn out like this. Even now, when I sit on the edge of my bed, staring at the morning light on the floor, I still ask myself the same quiet question. Where did things really begin to fall apart? People often think my story is simple. They look at me and say, "You married a millionaire, Christine. You must have lived a perfect life." But behind every comfortable home, every warm lamp, every soft blanket, there are shadows that no one sees. My husband, Braden Brooks, was not just any man. He was kind, educated, funny in a gentle way. And yes, he was a millionaire, but he also lived with a disability. His legs had been partially paralyzed in a car crash when he was 32. He used a wheelchair most of the time, and walking required braces and slow steps. People pitied him, but I never did. When I met him, all I saw was his calm smile, his patient voice, and the way he listened. Really listened as if every word I said mattered. I married him because I loved him, at least. That is what I believed. But love is a fragile thing. It breaks in places you don't expect. It cracks in silence, in small glances, in secrets whispered behind closed doors. And his secret, the one he carried so carefully, the one he hid from me for years, it did not just crack our marriage. It broke something inside me that I never thought could break. I still remember the morning when the first clue appeared. The house was quiet. The rain tapped softly against the windows, and Braden was sitting in the kitchen, staring at a letter he quickly folded and pushed away when he saw me. He smiled at me, but it wasn't his real smile. It was thin, fragile, like a glass about to fall from someone's hand. Something inside me whispered, "Christine, your life is about to change." I didn't know then how true that whisper was. I didn't know that this moment, this simple moment in our quiet kitchen, was the beginning of the unraveling of everything I held dear. If I had known, maybe I would have asked him about the letter. Maybe I would have held his hand longer. Maybe I would have prepared my heart. But life doesn't give warnings. It only leaves echoes. And this is the echo of how everything began to break. My name is Christine Parker, and before I ever became Mrs. Brooks, my life was quiet, almost too quiet. I grew up in a small town outside Madison, Wisconsin. My mother worked at a grocery store. My father fixed trucks in a worn-out garage at the edge of town. We lived in a tiny rented home that smelled of old wood and warm coffee. Life wasn't easy, but it was simple. Maybe that's why I always dreamed of something more, not wealth, not luxury, just something bigger than the same sidewalks and the same tired mornings. When I turned 28, I moved to the city, hoping to start over. I found work as a receptionist at a physical therapy clinic. It wasn't a glamorous job, but I liked the people, the soft colors on the walls, and the gentle hum of the machines. I liked greeting patients with a smile, even when I was tired. It made me feel helpful, needed, seen. That was where I met Braden. He came in for therapy sessions twice a week. He always wore a clean button-down shirt and simple gray pants. His black hair had a streak of silver near the front, something I found strangely elegant. He didn't speak much at first. He would just nod at me when he arrived and whisper a polite thank you when I held the door for him. One day though, he stayed behind after his session. Everyone else had left. The clinic was quiet. He looked at me for a long moment, then said, "Do you ever get tired of sitting behind that desk?" I remember smiling. "Sometimes," I said, "but I like watching people get better." His eyes softened in a way I can still picture even now. "That's a rare thing," he said, "seeing people with kindness." It was such a simple sentence, but it stayed with me. Maybe because no one had ever said something like that to me before. Maybe because I could feel the honesty in his voice. From that day on, our conversations became longer. He asked about my family, my dreams, my favorite books. He listened so quietly that I sometimes wondered if he could hear my heartbeat. One Tuesday afternoon, he asked, "Christine, would you like to have coffee with me someday?" I hesitated, not because he used a wheelchair that never bothered me, but because something about him felt different, gentle, steady, almost too good to be true. But I said yes. That coffee became dinner, and dinner became long drives to the lake, where he would watch the water while I talked about things I had never said aloud before. He told me about the accident that changed his life. He had been a business consultant, always flying from city to city. One night, he was driving home after a long trip. A truck driver fell asleep and hit Braden's car. The crash crushed his lower spine. The doctors said he was lucky to be alive. He spoke about it calmly, almost with acceptance. "It slowed me down," he said. "Maybe I needed that." I admired that. His strength, his softness, his peace. After 6 months of knowing each other, he asked me to marry him. I remember standing under the warm glow of his living room lamp, listening to his voice shake as he said my name. "I know I can't give you everything," he whispered, "but I can promise to love you in the best way I know how." I felt tears on my cheeks, not because I was sad, but because I believed him. I believed every word. Our wedding was small, just 20 people in a quiet garden. He held my hands while sitting in his wheelchair, and I could see the pride in his eyes. It made me feel beautiful, chosen, cherished. For the first year, our marriage felt peaceful. We ate breakfast together every morning. We watched old movies. We read in bed until one of us fell asleep. Sometimes he would ask me to drive him to the lake, the same place where we used to talk for hours. Life felt full, even if it wasn't perfect. Some days his pain was stronger. Some days he struggled to move, but he never complained. He would just smile and say, "I'm okay, Liv. Don't worry." I cared for him, not out of duty, but out of love. Our home wasn't grand, even though he was wealthy. Braden never liked showing off his money. He lived simply, a quiet house, soft carpets, clean curtains, warm lighting. He enjoyed comfort, not luxury. I respected that. It made him feel real. But after our second year of marriage, I began noticing something strange. Little things at first. A phone call he would take in the other room. Letters he put away quickly when I entered. A notebook he kept locked in his desk drawer. I didn't ask questions at first. I trusted him. Marriage is built on trust, isn't it? But the silence grew thicker. He would sit alone in his study for hours. Sometimes his eyes looked tired, almost haunted. When I asked if he was okay, he would simply kiss my forehead and say, "You don't need to worry about me." But I did worry. One night, around midnight, I woke up and found the bed empty. I walked quietly into the hallway and saw the light from his study. The door was slightly open. I heard his voice, soft, broken, as if he were crying but trying to hide it. "I don't know how much longer I can keep this from her," he whispered to someone on the phone. My heart stopped. I didn't know whether to walk in or stay hidden. I froze, my hand on the doorframe, listening to the silence that followed. I didn't hear the rest. The call ended. The light turned off. I slipped back into bed before he could see me. When he returned, I pretended to be asleep. I felt him lie down beside me slowly, as if he were carrying the weight of something he couldn't share. His breathing was shaky. I had never heard him breathe like that before. In the darkness, I whispered inside my mind, "Braden, what are you hiding from me?" But I said nothing out loud. The next morning, he acted normal. Too normal. He smiled too quickly. He spoke too softly. He avoided my eyes. And that was when I began to feel something I had never felt with him before. Distance. A quiet distance. Like he was still next to me, but his heart was slowly walking away. I tried to ignore it. I made his favorite breakfasts. I played his favorite music. I asked gentle questions, hoping he would open up. But he didn't. Instead, he became even more careful, more secretive, more distant. I kept reminding myself, "He loves you. He would never hurt you." But a small voice inside me whispered a different truth. Love doesn't hide forever. And deep down, I felt something changing. Not loudly, not suddenly, but slowly, quietly, like a soft crack forming under the weight of secrets. I didn't know then that these small cracks were the beginning of something much bigger. Something that would take our peaceful life and pull it apart, piece by fragile piece. Something that would break me in ways I had never imagined. The weeks that followed were quiet, too quiet. Silence can be peaceful, but this kind of silence felt like a slow storm building behind a closed window. Every morning, Braden would wake up before me. He used to sleep late, always pulling me closer when the sun peeked in. But now he slipped out of bed early, as if he didn't want me to see something. I noticed his body growing thinner. Not dramatically, but enough for me to see the change in the way his shirts fit. When I asked if he was eating well, he always said, "Yes, Liv, I'm fine." But he wasn't fine. I could feel it. One evening, I decided to sit with him in his study, a room he rarely let me spend time in. It wasn't that he banned me. He just liked keeping it organized, quiet, private. He was typing on his laptop when I knocked gently and peeked in. "Can I sit with you for a bit?" I asked softly. He hesitated for a second too long, then nodded. "Of course, you never need permission." But I did. At least, It felt like I did now. I sat in the small chair by the bookshelf, pretending to read something. He typed quietly, the soft clicking sound filling the room. Every few seconds, he minimized the window or switched tabs. He never used to do that. I didn't want to spy. I only wanted to understand. After a while, he closed the laptop slowly, almost protectively. "How was your day?" he asked, his voice gentle but distant. "Good," I said. "How was yours?" He smiled the same thin smile he'd been giving me for weeks. "It was okay. Just okay. Never good. Never honest." I watched him wheel himself to the window. He looked outside, even though the sky was dark and empty. "Something on your mind?" I asked. He didn't turn around. He just said, "Work things. Nothing important." But nothing important shouldn't make a person whisper at midnight. Nothing important shouldn't make someone hide letters in drawers. Nothing important shouldn't cause a man who once shared everything with me to shut me out completely. Still, I said nothing. I didn't want to push him. I didn't want to be another weight on his already heavy shoulders. But the distance kept growing. Everything changed one cold Friday morning. I woke up to find Braden sitting on the edge of the bed, something he rarely did without help. He held a small envelope in his hands. The same envelope I'd seen him hide weeks ago. He didn't notice I was awake at first. He stared at it with an expression I couldn't understand: fear, sadness, maybe guilt. When I sat up, he startled slightly and tucked it under the blanket beside him. "Sorry," he whispered. "Did I wake you?" "No," I said. "Are you okay?" He ran a hand through his hair, a gesture he used only when he was overwhelmed. "I'm fine, Liv. Really." I reached for his hand. He let me hold it, but only for a moment before he pulled away gently. "We should get breakfast," he said, forcing a small smile. "Come on, I'll meet you in the kitchen." I watched him wheel out of the room. That tiny envelope remained on the bed for just 3 seconds before he remembered it, rolled back in, grabbed it, and left again without a word. It was the first time he had ever acted afraid of me. A week later, the second sign came. I was sorting laundry in our bedroom when Braden left for a therapy session. He rarely missed them, even on difficult days. But that morning, he looked pale and tired. "Are you sure you're okay to go?" I asked. He nodded. "I'm just a little overwhelmed. I'll be better after the session." I kissed his cheek, watched him leave, then returned to folding our clothes. While putting away one of his jackets, I felt something in the inside pocket, a folded receipt. I didn't mean to look at it. It just slipped out and landed on the floor. But once I saw the numbers, my breath tightened. $18,000 withdrawn, cash, from one of his private accounts. He never withdrew that kind of money. Never in cash. Braden was responsible, careful, almost old-fashioned about his finances. Why would he take out so much money? And why hide the receipt? My heart beat fast as I stared at the paper, not because I suspected something sinful, but because I feared something was terribly wrong. I placed the receipt back exactly where it was. I didn't want him to know I had seen it, but the worry stayed. It crawled into my thoughts, into my sleep, into everything. 3 days later, I was alone at home when the doorbell rang. When I opened it, a woman stood there, tall, sharp-featured, dressed in a navy blue coat. She looked about 50, maybe older. Her posture was straight, and her expression unreadable. "Good afternoon," she said politely. "Is Mr. Brooks home?" "No," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "He's out for therapy." She nodded. "And you're his wife, Christine?" Something about the way she said my name made me uneasy. "Yes. Can I help you?" She reached into her bag and pulled out a business card. Her voice softened but not kindly. More like she felt sorry for something I didn't know yet. "My name is Marian Keller," she said. "I need to speak with your husband about a private matter. Please tell him I stopped by." Before I could ask anything else, she added, "It's urgent." Urgent? The word felt cold. I wanted to ask who she was. I wanted to ask why she came to our home. I wanted to ask what this private matter was. But she didn't wait. She just gave a polite nod, turned, and walked away with calm, purposeful steps. I looked at the card she handed me. Marianne Keller, family attorney. My stomach dropped. A family attorney? Why would a family attorney need to speak with my husband? Why would she come to our house without calling first? And why did Braden never mention her? When he returned home that afternoon, I held the card in my hand for a long time, unsure how to show it to him. Finally, as we sat in the living room, I said softly, "Someone came to see you today." He looked up slowly. His smile faded when he saw the card. His fingers trembled as he reached for it. Christine, did she say anything to you? Only that it was urgent. He closed his eyes, pressing the card between his palms. What's going on? I asked gently. He opened his eyes but wouldn't look at me. Nothing you need to worry about. My heart cracked a little. Brayden, please don't shut me out. He forced a shaky laugh. I'm not shutting you out. I need time. That's all. But time didn't feel like what he needed. He needed courage to say something he didn't want to say. The next day, Brayden left home early. He didn't say where he was going. He just said he had things to take care of. I tried to stay calm, but my worry turned into something heavier: fear. Not fear of him, not fear of losing money, but fear of losing the man I loved. I decided to call the physical therapy clinic, thinking maybe he had gone there. Hi, this is Christine Brooks, I said. Is Brayden there for his session? The receptionist checked. A moment later, she said gently, no, he didn't come in today. I thanked her and hung up slowly. He had lied. My hands felt cold as I sat on the edge of the couch. I reminded myself that people lie for many reasons. Sometimes to avoid worrying someone, sometimes out of embarrassment, sometimes out of fear. But Brayden had never lied to me before. Not once. Not about anything. Hours passed. He returned home around sunset, looking exhausted, as if he'd been carrying something heavy on his heart. How was your session? I asked quietly. He froze. It was fine, he said too quickly. Then he added, just tired. I nodded, pretending to believe him, but I knew the truth. And he knew I knew. He avoided my eyes. The distance between us, once small and soft, now felt like a deep canyon. I wanted to cross it, but he kept stepping farther away. One evening, after Brayden fell asleep, I walked through the house, trying to clear my mind. The living room was dim, lit only by a small lamp. The study door was slightly open. I hesitated, but curiosity and fear pushed me inside. His desk was tidy, except for one drawer, the one he always kept locked. Tonight, it was open. Inside lay the notebook I had seen him guard so carefully. I shouldn't have touched it, but my hand moved on its own. I opened it slowly. The first page was blank. The second page had a date written on top from 3 months ago, and beneath it, in Brayden's familiar handwriting, I don't know how to tell Christine. I don't know how to look at her without feeling guilty. My breath caught. Guilty? I turned to the next page. The truth will break her, but the lie is breaking me. My heart pounded so hard I could hear it. What truth? What lie? I turned one more page. Just one. It read, if anything happens to me, she must not blame herself. My hands shook so violently I almost dropped the notebook. I closed it quickly, placed it back exactly how it was, and walked out of the study, my legs trembling. I couldn't breathe. Something was happening to my husband, something terrible, and he was trying to protect me from it. But the fear that filled our home had grown too big, too heavy, to ignore. The next morning, I woke up determined to talk to him gently, lovingly, honestly. But when I walked into the kitchen, I found him sitting at the table, staring at an envelope, the same one he had hidden so many times. His eyes were wet, his hands were shaking. The room felt like it was holding its breath. Before I could speak, he whispered, Liv, we need to talk. His voice broke on the last word. I stood there, frozen, my heart pounding. I didn't know then that this conversation would be the beginning of everything falling apart. Not the end, the beginning. What he was about to tell me, what he had been hiding, what he had been carrying alone, would change our marriage forever, would change me forever. I took a deep breath and said softly, I'm listening. He looked up and the pain in his eyes told me I was not ready. No one could be ready. Brayden didn't speak right away. He just sat there, staring at the envelope as if it held something alive, something fragile and dangerous. I pulled out the chair beside him and waited. The air felt thick. The kitchen, usually warm and full of morning light, felt strangely cold. Finally, he whispered, I never wanted you to find out like this. I swallowed hard. Find out what, Brayden? He rubbed his forehead, his hands trembling slightly. I tried to protect you. I thought I could fix things before you ever needed to know. Know what? I repeated, my voice barely a whisper. He slid the envelope toward me with a slow, hesitant motion. Please, he said gently, just be calm. Whatever you think, it's not what it looks like. My heart thudded painfully. I opened it with fingers that didn't feel like mine. Inside were medical documents. I froze. My eyes scanned the top of the page. Neurological deterioration progress report. My breath hitched. Brayden, what is this? He closed his eyes. I was diagnosed 18 months ago. The room tilted. I felt like the floor slipped an inch under my feet. Diagnosed with what? I whispered. He didn't look at me. His voice came out small and shaky. With a degenerative nerve condition, a complication from the old spinal injury. The doctors say it's progressing faster, much faster than expected. My blood ran cold. I clutched the papers. What does that mean? What does faster mean? He turned his wheelchair slightly, facing away from me. It means I may lose more function, maybe lose the ability to move my hands, maybe lose the ability to breathe without help, maybe lose. He stopped, voice trembling. My independence. I felt the air leave my lungs. My husband, the man who fought so hard for every step, every movement, every slice of normal life was slipping away again. And he kept it hidden. Why didn't you tell me? I asked, my voice cracking. He opened his eyes slowly and whispered, because you married me when you could have married anyone. And I didn't want to trap you in a life you didn't choose. That sentence didn't just break my heart, it shattered it. Brayden, I whispered, reaching for his hand. I chose you. I would choose you again. You don't have to face this alone. But he pulled his hand away gently. Liv, you don't understand. This isn't temporary. It isn't like the injury before. This won't get better. It only gets worse. He took a shaky breath. And I didn't want you to watch me slowly fall apart. Tears slid down my cheeks before I even realized I was crying. Do you think I would leave you? I asked softly. He didn't answer. And that silence told me everything. He believed I would, or at least, he feared it with every piece of his heart. But the medical reports weren't the only secret. He thought that was the end of the bad news. I thought that was the weight he had been hiding. But there was more. There was much more. Brayden, I said gently, wiping my tears. Is this why the attorney came by? Is this why you've been distant? He hesitated, then nodded. Yes, but there's something else. Something I didn't want you to see. He reached into his pocket and pulled out his phone. He opened a message thread, a thread with someone named Catherine Carter. My heart stumbled. Who is that? He bit the inside of his cheek. It's someone I've been helping. Helping? I leaned closer. The messages were short. Her. Thank you again. I don't know what I'd do without your support. Him. You don't owe me anything. Just take care of yourself. Her. I'm trying. The treatment is hard. Him. I'll cover the next session too. Don't worry. My stomach twisted. Brayden, who is she? I asked, my voice shaking. He finally looked at me with eyes full of guilt. Liv, she's my daughter. I felt something inside me collapse. Your daughter? I repeated, barely breathing. He nodded slowly. She's 22. Her mother and I were together briefly before the accident. I didn't know she existed until 2 years ago. My thoughts spun so fast I felt dizzy. Why didn't you tell me? I whispered. He ran a hand through his hair, frustrated and ashamed. I was afraid. Afraid you would think I kept it from you on purpose. Afraid you would think less of me. Afraid it would change the way you looked at us. I stared at the table, trying to hold on to something stable. A daughter. He had a daughter. And the money? I asked softly, afraid of the answer. He sighed. She was sick, Christine. Hospital bills, treatment, therapy. She didn't ask me for anything. I chose to support her. She's young and alone. Her mother passed away last year. My eyes softened despite the pain tearing at my chest. What does she have? I whispered. Liver disease, he said quietly. She's been on the transplant list for months, but her condition has been getting worse. I covered my mouth with my hand as tears filled my eyes again. And you paid everything in secret? He nodded. I didn't want you to think I was choosing her over you, but she needed me, and I couldn't let her suffer. So I took money from my private account. I kept the receipts hidden. I kept the meetings secret. I kept everything locked away. He looked down, ashamed. And that attorney who came by? I asked. He whispered. She's helping me arrange legal protection for Catherine, in case something happens to me. I felt the pieces finally connect, the letters, the phone calls, the late night whispers, the notebook, everything. He wasn't cheating. He wasn't planning to leave me. He wasn't hiding a woman. He was hiding a child. His child. and his fear of losing everything, including his life. But my heart still broke even though the truth wasn't betrayal in the way I feared. It still hit me like a wave. Brayden, why didn't you trust me with this? I whispered. He looked up, tears pooling in his eyes. I didn't want you to feel burdened. You already carry so much because of me. I didn't want to add more weight to your shoulders. I shook my head slowly, feeling tears fall again. You don't protect a marriage by hiding things from your wife, I whispered. You protect it by sharing the pain, not carrying it alone. He covered his face with both hands. I know I messed up. I wanted to spare you, but in trying to spare me, he had broken something deeper. Trust, not shattered, but cracked. And cracks, even tiny ones, can change the way light enters a home. 3 days passed before I asked the question that had been sitting on my heart silently. Can I meet her? Brayden looked up in shock. You want to meet her? Yes, I said quietly. She's part of your life. She's part of you. And I love all the parts of you, even the ones I didn't know. He swallowed hard, emotion catching in his throat. Are you sure? I nodded. Even though my stomach twisted with fear and insecurity, I knew I had to do this for him, and for myself. We drove to a small apartment building across town. The hallways smelled like old carpet and warm dust. My heart pounded as Brayden knocked on a faded wooden door. A young woman opened it. She had long, dark hair, tired eyes, a thin frame, a shy, uncertain smile. Dad, she said softly, looking at Brayden. Dad, that one word shifted everything. Brayden introduced us quietly. Catherine, this is Christine, my wife. Catherine's eyes widened, and she looked down, embarrassed. I'm sorry, she whispered. I didn't know he hadn't told you. I told him he should. I didn't want to cause any trouble. Her voice was gentle, apologetic, full of guilt that didn't belong to her. I stepped forward and offered a soft smile. It's not your fault, I said. I'm glad to finally meet you. Her eyes softened, filling with relief and emotion. We sat together in her small living room. Her home was clean but modest: old couch, chipped table, mismatched pillows. Everything spoke of someone trying to survive quietly. Brayden asked her about her treatments. She spoke about the pain, the fatigue, the waiting lists, the uncertainty. I listened quietly, feeling my heart ache for her. She wasn't some hidden betrayal. She was a young woman fighting for her life, a young woman who had already lost her mother, a young woman who deserved support. When we left, Brayden squeezed my hand. Thank you, he whispered. You don't know what this means to me. But I did. I truly did. Even after meeting Catherine, even after understanding the truth, the fear didn't vanish. Because there was still the medical diagnosis, the degenerative condition, the worsening weakness in his hands, the subtle tremors in his arms, the fatigue that drained him faster every day, and the quiet truth he didn't say out loud. He didn't know how much time he had before everything changed. Some nights I would wake up and watch him sleep, listening to his breathing, wondering if tomorrow would be worse. He tried to act normal. He tried to laugh. He tried to be the husband I married. But the truth was always there, like a quiet shadow following us from room to room. And the notebook in his drawer, the one I never opened again, held pages I knew were filled with more fears he didn't want me to see. I tried my best to be strong for him. I cooked healthy meals. I went with him to checkups. I helped him with stretches and exercises. But deep inside, I was terrified. Terrified of losing him. Terrified of watching him fade. Terrified of facing a future where his hands couldn't hold mine anymore. And behind all that fear was another truth growing silently inside me. A truth I hadn't told him yet. A truth that would change everything. Again. But I wasn't ready to say it. Not yet. Not when he was already carrying so much. So the secret sat quietly inside me, waiting. Waiting for the right moment. Waiting for the moment that would break us both. If you had asked me then what the hardest moment of my marriage was, I would have said it was hearing Brayden's diagnosis, or learning about Catherine and the quiet burden he had carried alone. But I was wrong. Life has a way of saving the deepest cut for the moment you least expect it. And for us, that moment came one quiet evening in late autumn, when the air smelled like cold leaves and weak sunlight, and the world outside felt strangely far away. Brayden had been having a rough week. His legs were tighter than usual. His hands trembled when he tried to button his shirt, but he still smiled, still insisted he was fine, still tried to carry himself with the calm dignity he'd always held onto. I helped him into his wheelchair that morning. He tried to stand briefly, as he always did, using the braces for support, but today, his knees gave out completely. He fell backward into the chair, hard. His breath caught. Mine broke. Brayden, I gasped, rushing to his side. He forced a smile, though his voice trembled. It's okay, Liv. I'm just tired. But I saw the truth in his face. Fear, shock, humiliation he didn't want me to see. I knelt in front of him, holding his hands gently. We'll talk to your doctor, I said quietly. He shook his head, blinking back frustration. No, I just need rest. But we both knew it wasn't rest. It was progression. The progression he had hidden from me for months. My own secret growing heavier for weeks. I had been carrying something inside me, a secret I kept close, unsure how to share it. Every morning, I woke up intending to tell him. Every night, I fell asleep with the truth still locked behind my lips. It wasn't fear of him. It wasn't shame. It was timing. How could I tell my husband, a man losing his independence, a man carrying the weight of a sick daughter, a man drowning quietly in fear, something that would change our entire future? But secrets grow, even in silence. And mine had grown so large that it felt like a second heartbeat inside me. That night, after dinner, the house was quiet except for the soft hum of the heater. Brayden sat in his study with the door half open. He was staring at a document on his desk, something printed, with heavy legal language at the top. I recognized the header, Advanced Medical Directive. Advanced Medical Directive. My chest tightened. He was planning for his future without me. He was planning for the worst. He was planning alone. Again, I stood in the doorway, watching him quietly. His shoulders were slumped. His hand shook as he held a pen. He didn't hear me approach until I reached out and touched his arm. Brayden, what is that? I asked softly. He looked up, startled. His eyes were tired, filled with resignation. Just paperwork. What kind? I whispered. He hesitated before saying, end-of-life decisions. The words slammed into me like cold wind. I pulled out the chair beside him and sat down slowly. Why are you doing this alone? I asked, my voice trembling. Why am I not part of this conversation? He looked away, jaw tight. Because it's my burden, not yours. My heart cracked. Brayden, I'm your wife. Your life is my life. Your pain is my pain. Why won't you let me stand beside you? He closed his eyes, defeated. You already carry too much. I know you worry about Catherine. I know you worry about me. I don't want to add more weight to your shoulders. I shook my head. Marriage isn't about protecting someone from sadness, Brayden. It's about facing the sadness together. His silence told me he agreed. But fear held him back. The same fear that had been building since the night he cried into the phone, whispering, I don't know how much longer I can keep this from her. He finally opens up, but not fully. After a long quiet moment, Brayden spoke again. His voice was so soft I almost missed it. I'm scared, Liv. My heart squeezed. I know, I whispered. You're allowed to be scared. He shook his head. No, not of the illness. I've lived with pain all my life. He looked into my eyes, and what I saw there broke me. I'm scared of losing you. A tear slid down his cheek. He didn't wipe it. He let it fall. You deserve a life that isn't full of hospitals and worry, he whispered. You deserve a husband who can take care of you, not one who will eventually need you to feed him, dress him, lift him. His voice cracked. Watch him decline. I reached for his hands and held them firmly. Brayden, I didn't marry you for what you could do. I married you for who you are. He looked away, guilt tightening his jaw. I know, but I can't stand the thought of being a burden to you. And that single sentence was the dividing line between the life we had and the life we were about to fall into. Because I realized in that moment that his silence wasn't just fear. It was shame. Shame of needing help. Shame of being vulnerable. Shame of being loved through weakness. And shame can make a person hide in ways love cannot always reach. Just as I opened my mouth to speak, someone knocked on the front door. The sound echoed through the house, sharp and unexpected. I frowned. Are you expecting anyone? Brayden froze. His stillness lasted a heartbeat too long. No, he said, but it sounded like a lie. I walked to the door slowly. When I opened it, a paramedic stood outside. A woman with kind eyes and a clipboard in hand. Good evening, she said gently. I'm looking for a Mr. Brayden Brooks. My heart dropped into my stomach. Why? I whispered. She hesitated, glancing past me toward Brayden's study. He scheduled a medical wellness check for himself. He missed the appointment earlier today, So we were sent to follow up. I blinked, numb. He scheduled? What? Before she could answer, Braden called out from behind me. It's fine, I'm fine, he said quickly, rolling toward us. You don't have to be here. Tell them I'm okay. The paramedic looked at him with gentle concern. Sir, the appointment notes say you are experiencing respiratory weakness and hand paralysis episodes. Stop, he snapped sharply. I turned to him in shock. Braden never snapped. Never. The paramedic held up her hands in apology. I'm sorry, sir. I didn't mean just leave, he whispered, voice breaking. She hesitated, then nodded respectfully and walked away. I closed the door slowly, then turned to him. Respiratory weakness? I whispered. Hand paralysis episodes? Braden, why didn't you tell me? He didn't answer. He just wheeled himself away from me, away from the conversation, away from the truth. Braden, I said again, my voice trembling. Why didn't you tell me? He stopped in the middle of the hallway but didn't look back. Because I didn't want you to see how fast I'm losing control. His voice cracked. And because I don't know how much time I have left before. He didn't finish the sentence. He didn't need to. I felt the floor tilt again, the world blur, the air turn thin. My husband, the man I loved, was deteriorating more quickly than he'd ever admitted. And he was planning everything privately, his care, his decisions, his goodbye. A quiet goodbye I didn't even know I was walking toward. That night, after he went to bed early, I sat on the floor of our living room, holding my knees, unable to stop shaking. The truth I had been hiding inside me felt heavier than ever. I thought about telling him weeks ago, then last week, then earlier today, but every time I tried, something in me whispered, not now, he can't handle it. But now I had no choice. Secrets both his and mine had piled into the space between us so deeply that it felt like the walls themselves were closing in. I walked into our bedroom. Braden was awake, staring at the ceiling, tears sliding quietly into his hair. I sat on the edge of the bed. I need to tell you something, I whispered. He turned his head slowly, his expression filled with exhaustion. What is it, Liv? I took a shaky breath, a long one, a deep one. I'm pregnant. The room fell silent, completely silent. Braden's face drained of color. His eyes froze wide and stunned. You're, what? He whispered. Pregnant, I said again, voice trembling. 5 weeks, his hands clenched the blanket. His breath caught. He didn't speak, not for a long moment. When he finally did, his voice came out broken. Liv, no. This can't be happening. My heart cracked. Why not? I whispered. His eyes filled with tears, but not the kind I expected. Not joy, not relief, but fear. A deep, soul-heavy fear. Because, he whispered, I don't know if I'll be here long enough to be a father, and you'll be raising that child alone. He covered his face with his hands and sobbed. I reached for him, but he pushed my hands away, gently, but firmly. Liv, I can't do this to you, he cried softly. I can't leave you with a child and a sick husband. I can't trap you in that life. You deserve more. You deserve someone healthy, someone who can hold your child without help, someone who isn't dying. My heart broke so sharply that I felt the pain in my bones. Braden, I whispered, this baby is ours, not mine alone. He shook his head again and again. Double quotes no. Liv, you don't understand. He looked at me with eyes full of devastation. I already signed the directive. I already set things in motion. If my condition worsens, I chose not to pursue life support. I felt the world stop. Braden, no, I touched his face, trembling. You can't give up. Not now. Not when there's a child. He took my wrist gently, his voice barely a breath. I didn't know, Liv. And now it's too late. I've already accepted the end. His voice cracked. But you have to choose life. And I don't want you choosing it with me slowly fading away in front of you. And that was the moment everything changed. The moment I realized we weren't just fighting a disease anymore. We were fighting each other's fear. His fear of being a burden. My fear of losing him. His fear of leaving a child without a father. My fear of raising our child without him. 2 hearts, 2 secrets. 2 people who loved each other deeply but were drowning in the weight of what they hadn't said. Braden's words replayed in my mind long after he fell asleep. He lay beside me, exhausted from crying, his breaths uneven and tired, but my eyes stayed open, staring at the ceiling, counting the cracks in the paint, wondering how quickly life could change in just a single evening. Pregnant. The word felt too small for the weight it carried. I placed a hand on my stomach, still flat and unchanged on the outside, but holding a future inside it. A tiny heartbeat, a tiny piece of Brayden, a tiny piece of us. I should have felt joy. I should have felt hope. But instead, I felt fear swallowing me whole. Because the father of my child had looked at me with heartbreak, not happiness. Because he'd already chosen to step away from life support. Because he believed he would leave me alone before our baby ever said their first word. And because he believed he was protecting me by preparing to disappear. The next morning, Brayden didn't say much. He woke up slowly, wincing as he tried to move. His muscles were stiff again. His hands were trembling. But what hurt more than the symptoms was the distance in his eyes. He didn't look at me the way he used to. Not with softness. Not with the warm, quiet love that once lived between us. He looked at me like I was someone he was preparing to leave. Someone he loved enough to walk away from. His voice was gentle when he finally spoke. "Did you sleep at all last night?" "No," I whispered. He nodded, as if he expected that answer. "Christine, I'm sorry," he said softly. "For what?" I asked, though the question felt fragile. "For everything. For hiding things. For not being strong enough to give you the life you deserve." I reached for his hand, but he pulled away again gently, but with intention. That small movement cut deeper than any words. "Brayden," I said quietly, "I need you to listen to me." But before I could continue, he whispered, "I heard you crying last night." I froze. "What?" "I wasn't asleep," he said, staring at the ceiling. "I heard you whispering to the baby. I heard you saying you didn't know what to do." My heart twisted so hard I felt it physically. "I'm sorry," I whispered. "I didn't want to upset you." "You didn't upset me," he murmured. "You just proved what I already knew." I frowned. "What does that mean?" He closed his eyes. "That you're stronger than this life with me. Stronger than whatever comes next." His voice cracked. "And you deserve the chance to build a healthy, happy life without being dragged down by someone who's only getting worse." I shook my head fiercely, tears rising again. "Don't say that. Please don't say that." But he continued, voice trembling. "It's true, Liv. And deep down, you know it. I saw the fear in your eyes when you told me about the baby." My throat tightened. "That wasn't fear of the baby," I said. "That was fear of losing you." He finally looked at me, really looked at me, and there was so much pain in his expression that I felt my breath shake. "Christine, loving you has been the only thing in my life that made me feel whole," he whispered. "But love is not enough to fight what's happening to me." Later that afternoon, he asked me to sit with him in the living room. The air was heavy, still, almost suffocating. He rolled his wheelchair toward the window. The sunlight fell across his face, making him look fragile in a way I had never seen before. He took a deep breath. "I need to tell you something else," he said quietly. My stomach dropped. "There's more?" He nodded. "I met with my attorney last month." I felt my heartbeat slow. "Why?" "To make arrangements for when the illness gets worse." His voice was gentle, too gentle. "What arrangements?" I asked. He hesitated. Then he said it. "I updated my will, and I set up everything so that you and the baby, and Catherine, would be taken care of even if I'm not here." My breath caught. "I didn't know about the baby then," he added quickly. "But I left everything to you. The house, the accounts, my investments, everything." My eyes filled with tears. "Brayden, why are you talking like you've already decided you're leaving?" He looked down at his hands, which were shaking again. "Because I don't want to be kept alive by machines if my body stops working," he whispered. "I don't want you to watch that. I don't want the baby to grow up seeing that. I don't want to live a life where I'm only surviving." I covered my mouth, trying to stay calm, but tears slid through my fingers. "You're choosing to die," I whispered. The sentence tasted like pain. He shook his head. "No, I'm choosing not to prolong suffering. There's a difference." "Not to me," I cried softly. "Not when you're talking about leaving us." He looked at me with heartbreaking tenderness. "I don't want to leave," he said, "but I can feel my body slipping. Everything is getting harder breathing, gripping things, moving." He looked at his hands, focusing on the slight tremor. "Every day feels like one more goodbye I haven't said the right way." The room blurred through my tears. "Brayden," I whispered, "I love you. I want you here. I need you here." He took a shaky breath. "I love you too, Liv. More than anything. And that's why I have to think of your future, not just mine." He paused, voice softening even more. I don't want you spending years watching me suffer, or raising a child while also caregiving for someone who's slowly losing everything. His words formed cracks inside me I didn't know existed. The phone rang later that evening. Braden was resting in bed, too tired to move much after the emotional weight of the day. I answered quietly. Hello, Christine? Catherine's soft voice came through the speaker. Hi, honey, I said, forcing calmness. Is everything okay? I need to talk to you, she said nervously. It's about my dad. My heart dropped. What about him? She hesitated for a long moment. I think he's been preparing me for something, she whispered. He keeps telling me to promise I'll stay strong, that I'll keep going even if. She broke off, choking on tears. I closed my eyes, feeling the familiar pain rise. He's been trying to prepare you for the worst, I said softly. She sniffled. I know he's sick, but he won't tell me everything. He keeps saying he doesn't want to scare me, but I'm scared anyway. Her words echoed my own heart. I'm scared too, I whispered. There was silence on the line. Then she said quietly, Can we meet tomorrow? You and me? Yes, I said without hesitation. Dad needs us, she whispered, and I think he needs to be reminded of what he still has. Her voice trembled with a courage that made me tear up. Of course, I said. We'll meet. We'll figure this out together. Even as I hung up, I felt something shift deep inside me. Braden had been planning everything alone, but maybe, just maybe, we could help him carry the fear he had been holding like a secret weight. That night, Braden couldn't sleep. Neither could I. He lay awake, staring at the wall. I lay beside him, watching the rise and fall of his chest, terrified that it would weaken. In the darkness, he whispered, I'm not afraid to die, live. I'm afraid of what it will do to you. I rolled onto my side, touching his cheek gently. And I'm afraid of what living without you will do to me. He closed his eyes, tears escaping. I didn't want the baby to grow up with memories of a sick father, he whispered. And I didn't want you to grow up with the memory of a father who gave up, I answered softly. The silence that followed wasn't cold. It was heavy, full of everything we were both too scared to say. Finally, he whispered, I don't know how to be brave anymore. I pressed my forehead to his. You don't have to be brave alone. He let out a shaky breath, but I could see the truth. He didn't believe he deserved that kind of support. Not anymore. Not with the illness progressing. Not with Catherine needing help. Not with a baby on the way. He felt guilty for existing. Guilty for needing care. Guilty for being loved. And guilt is a powerful thing. It can pull a person into a darkness they can't escape alone. Just after midnight, I finally fell asleep. And when I woke up, Braden wasn't beside me. The bedroom was cold, too quiet. A chill crawled through my body. I slipped out of bed and walked into the hallway. The house was dim, the early morning sky still gray through the windows. Braden? I called softly. No answer. I checked the living room. Empty. The study. Empty. The kitchen. Empty. Panic rose in my chest. Then I saw it. The front door opened just a crack. And Braden's wheelchair gone. My breath stopped. My heart dropped. My entire body went cold. Because Braden couldn't have gone far. Not with his condition. Not without struggling. But he'd gone somewhere. Alone. In silence. Without telling me. Without taking his phone. Without saying goodbye. And I realized, with a fear that felt like ice in my blood, this wasn't just him needing fresh air. This wasn't just him needing space. This was him walking toward a decision he had been planning quietly, carefully, painfully. A decision that felt final, permanent. And the real turning point of our story began the moment I whispered into the empty house, Braden, please don't leave me. The cold morning air hit my face the moment I stepped outside. The sky was a pale gray, the kind of color that makes everything feel heavier than it already is. I stood on the porch, my heart racing, my breath unsteady. Braden was gone. His wheelchair was gone, and he had left without a sound. For a moment, I couldn't move. Fear pinned me in place. 1,000 terrible thoughts flashed through my mind, none of them I dared to follow too far. Then something inside me snapped awake. I ran back inside, grabbed my phone, and dialed Catherine's number with trembling hands. She answered on the second ring, her voice groggy. Christine, it's early. Is everything okay? No, I whispered, voice breaking. Braden is gone. What do you mean gone? He left the house. Alone. I heard her sharp inhale. I'm coming, she said immediately. I'll be there in 20 minutes. I hung up and fought back the wave of panic rising inside me. Brayden could barely walk without braces. He could barely breathe some mornings. Where could he possibly go? Why had he left? The question hurt more than the cold air. By the time Catherine arrived, my coat was on, my keys were in hand, and I was pacing the porch in circles. Her face was pale when she rushed toward me. "Do you have any idea where he might go?" she asked. I nodded, even though my legs felt weak. "There are a few places," I whispered, "and one in particular." We got into my car and drove through the silent streets. The first place we checked was the lake where Brayden and I used to talk for hours during our first year together, where we sat on quiet evenings watching the sun melt into the water. If he was searching for peace, for clarity, that would be the place. As we approached, my headlights swept over the parking lot, empty. My heart dropped. Catherine touched my arm gently. "He's not here, Christine. Let's keep looking." I nodded and wiped my eyes. The next place we drove to was the old therapy center, the place where Brayden and I first met. I stared through the glass windows. Dark, closed, nothing. Next, we drove to the small bookstore he loved, the one that always smelled like old paper and warm dust. Still nothing. With each empty place, my breaths grew more frantic, more shallow. Catherine noticed. "Christine," she whispered softly, "we'll find him." But her voice trembled too, because she knew as well as I did Brayden hadn't left for errands. He hadn't left for a stroll. He left because he believed he was protecting us. He left because he was afraid of being a burden. He left because he thought disappearing would hurt us less than staying. And that broke both our hearts. The place of his deepest fear. There was one last place he might go, a place he never talked about, yet one I had seen in his eyes many times. The place of his accident. The intersection outside the city, near a row of silent pine trees. The spot where everything in his life changed. Where he lost the use of his legs. Where he lost his freedom. Where he lost pieces of himself he never got back. We drove there in silence. The closer we got, the heavier my chest became. As we turned onto the long rural road, Catherine leaned forward, pressing her hand against the dashboard, eyes scanning every direction. "Slow down," she whispered. I think I see something." I brought the car to a stop. We both stared ahead. There near the trees was Brayden's wheelchair, empty. My whole soul dropped. I turned off the engine and flung open the door. Catherine ran beside me as we hurried toward the chair. It was tilted slightly, as if he'd left it in a hurry, or fallen from it. "Dad?" Catherine shouted, voice shaking. "Dad?" But the woods were quiet, too quiet. My heart pounded so loudly I could hear it echo in my ears. Then a faint sound, a soft cough, a weak breath. "Brayden?" I called out, stepping deeper into the trees. And then I saw him, slumped against the trunk of an old pine tree, legs stretched awkwardly, hands trembling, face pale as winter. His eyes lifted slowly when he saw us. "Liv?" he whispered, his voice barely there. Something inside me cracked wide open. I dropped to my knees in front of him. "Brayden," I whispered, touching his cheek gently. "What are you doing? Why did you leave?" His lips trembled as he tried to speak. "I didn't want you to see me get worse." Catherine knelt beside him, tears filling her eyes. "Dad, you scared us," she whispered. "You can't leave like that, not ever." He looked between us, his daughter, his wife, the people who loved him most. He looked confused, guilty, and terribly, terribly tired. "I thought it would be easier," he whispered. "For both of you." Catherine shook her head firmly. "No," she said, her voice trembling. "It's not easier. It's worse. We're scared because we love you." Brayden's throat worked as he swallowed painfully. "I didn't want to burden anyone," he whispered. "I didn't want the baby to grow up with a father who can't walk or lift them or stay alive long enough to see them grow." A sob escaped my chest. "Brayden," I said softly, cupping his face, "you don't protect people by leaving them. You protect them by staying, by trying, by letting them love you." He closed his eyes. "I didn't think I was worth loving like that," he whispered. Catherine reached for his hand, her voice breaking. "Dad, please, don't do this alone. You're not alone. You have me, you have Christine, and you have a baby coming. Your family isn't a burden. It's your lifeline." Her words, spoken with such raw honesty, seemed to soften something in him. He opened his eyes again, looked at her, then at me. I saw something shift. Not completely, just a small crack in the wall he had built around his pain. "I don't know how to face what's coming," he whispered. I leaned closer until our foreheads touched. You don't have to know. You only have to let us walk with you. He let out a shaky breath. For the first time in weeks, I saw something in his expression that I had feared was gone forever, a flicker of hope. Small, fragile, but real. Catherine placed her hand on his shoulder. Let's go home, she whispered. Please. Brayden nodded slowly, not with certainty, not with strength, but with surrender. The good kind. The kind that means someone has stopped running from the people who love them. It took time to get him back to the wheelchair. His legs were too weak, his breathing shallow, his body trembling from the cold and the exertion. Catherine supported his right side. I supported his left. When we finally settled him into the chair, he slumped forward slightly, exhausted. I wrapped my scarf around his neck. Catherine tucked her coat around his legs. He looked between us again, eyes glassy with emotion. I don't deserve either of you, he whispered. Catherine shook her head. You deserve love just as much as anyone. And then I said softly, maybe even more. His lip trembled. A tear slipped down his cheek. Thank you, he whispered, for not giving up on me. I squeezed his hand, my own tears falling freely. We never will, I said. Not now, not ever. The drive home was quiet but not empty. Brayden leaned his head back against the seat, eyes closed, breathing slow but steady. Catherine sat beside him in the back seat, keeping a gentle hand on his arm as if afraid he might disappear again. I kept glancing at him through the rearview mirror. Every time I looked, I saw something different. Guilt, relief, fear, love, all tangled in a fragile knot. But he was here, alive, breathing, with us. And that was the first step toward healing, not just for him, but for all of us. When we got back to the house, Brayden reached for my hand before I could help him out of the car. His grip was weak, but intentional. Christine, he whispered, I'm so sorry. A tear slid down my cheek. We'll talk later, I said gently. Right now, let's get you warm. Catherine helped me lift him carefully, and once he was inside our living room, wrapped in blankets, something in the room felt different. Not lighter, not happier, but honest. For the first time in months, Brayden wasn't hiding. He wasn't pretending. He wasn't pushing us away. He was here fully, painfully, vulnerably here. And that meant everything. As Catherine stepped into the kitchen to make tea, Brayden looked at me, really looked. I thought disappearing was the only way to save you, he whispered. And I thought losing you was the only thing I'd never survive, I whispered back. He let out a shaky breath. I don't want to give up, he said softly. Not anymore. Not after today. Relief washed through me so intensely it left me trembling. I cupped his face gently. Then don't. And right there, in the quiet of our living room, his voice barely audible, he whispered, I'll stay. I'll fight. For you. For Catherine. For the baby. My tears fell freely now. And for the first time in a very long time, I believed him. The day Brayden disappeared and we brought him home marked the beginning of a new chapter, not a perfect one, not a painless one, but a true one. Something shifted in the air around us. It wasn't magic, and it wasn't instant healing. It was something quieter, something fragile, something human. It was honesty. For the first time in months, Brayden wasn't pretending to be strong. He wasn't hiding the tremors in his hands or the struggles in his breath. He wasn't trying to shield us from the truth by walking into the pain alone. He was letting us in, and that changed everything. I woke early the next day. The house was quiet, the kind of quiet that comes after a storm has finally passed. Soft gray light filtered through the curtains. When I walked into the living room, I found Brayden sitting by the window, wrapped in a blanket, staring outside with tired eyes. He turned when he heard me. Hey, he whispered. His voice was soft, less apologetic than the night before, more grounded. Hey, I answered, sitting beside him. For a moment we just watched the sky lighten. Two people who felt older today than they did yesterday. How are you feeling? I finally asked. He took a slow breath. A little embarrassed, he admitted, and a lot relieved. Relieved? I repeated gently. He nodded. I never wanted you to see me like that. But I also didn't think anyone would come looking for me. My heart tightened. Brayden, I said, taking his hand carefully, I will always look for you. Always? Tears filled his eyes, but he blinked them away. You shouldn't have to. But I want to, I whispered. He looked down at my hand resting on his. And the baby? He asked quietly. What about them? Are you still happy? His voice trembled on that last word. I felt my heart soften. I placed his hand on my stomach. I'm scared, I admitted honestly, but I'm also grateful, and I'm ready, and I want you to be part of this, whatever that looks like. He swallowed hard. I want that too, he whispered. More than anything. Catherine's strength. Catherine arrived later that morning with warm soup and a determination in her eyes that reminded me of Brayden. She hugged him gently, then hugged me. We're a team now, she said, matter-of-factly. No more secrets. No more disappearing acts. Brayden smiled weakly. I'll try. Try? Catherine raised a brow. No, Dad. You'll do. You scared us half to death. He chuckled, a soft, tired sound, but a real one. I know. I'm sorry. She sat beside him. You don't have to be sorry, she said, placing a hand over his. You just have to stay. That's all. He nodded slowly, letting her words sink in. Watching them together, father and daughter, strangers just months ago, now bonded by something deeper, I felt a quiet warmth fill the room. The kind that feels like healing. The conversation we needed that evening, long after Catherine left. Brayden and I sat together on the couch. No interruptions, no distractions, just us. The room was dim, lit only by a soft lamp. The shadows on the walls moved like gentle waves. I need to tell you everything, Brayden said suddenly. I nodded, giving him the space he needed. He took a long breath. You deserve the truth, all of it, even the parts I'm ashamed of. I squeezed his hand but didn't interrupt. He began slowly. The diagnosis. I got it 18 months ago. At first, the symptoms were small. A tremor here, some numbness there. I thought it was stress. His voice softened. Then the doctor told me it was progressive, that there was no cure, that eventually, I would lose more and more function. I felt tears rise again, but I held them back. I didn't tell you because I didn't want pity. I didn't want you to look at me differently. And I definitely didn't want you to give up your life to take care of me. I shook my head, but he continued. And then I found out about Catherine. He swallowed hard. That shook me too. I felt guilty for not knowing her. Guilty that I wasn't there for her mother. Guilty for having a daughter who was sick and alone. His voice cracked. I wanted to help her, but I didn't want to burden you with another responsibility. I thought, maybe I could manage both secrets until things settled. He looked up at me with broken eyes. But nothing settled. Everything got worse. And instead of letting you help me, I pushed you away. A tear slid down his cheek. I didn't protect you, Liv. I hurt you. I leaned closer, touching his face gently. You tried to protect me, I whispered. But you don't have to protect me from loving you. He closed his eyes as another tear fell. I know, he whispered back. I finally see that. We spent hours talking, honest, painful, healing hours. By the end of the night, Brayden said something I never expected to hear. I want help, he whispered. I want treatment. I want to see specialists. I want to try everything I can before making decisions about directives or end-of-life care. My heart swelled with relief. And I want to be a father, he added softly. I want to meet our baby. Even if I can't do everything, I can love them. And I can try. I wrapped my arms around him carefully, feeling him breathe against my shoulder, slow, fragile, determined. We'll do this together, I whispered. All three of us. He nodded against me. For the first time in months, he said, his voice barely audible. I want to live. The following weeks were challenging, but filled with small victories. Brayden began physical therapy again, this time with a specialist who focused on neurological cases. He started medication to slow the progression. He met with a counselor who helped him process the fear he had been carrying alone. Some days were harder than others. Some days he couldn't hold a cup without shaking. Some days he couldn't stand even with help. But he tried. Every day he tried. And I saw something returning to him: hope, strength, a quiet will to keep moving forward. Catherine visited often, sometimes with groceries, sometimes with encouragement, sometimes just to sit beside him and talk. Their relationship grew into something beautiful, not rushed, not perfect, but honest. At 10 weeks, I heard the baby's heartbeat for the first time. Brayden held my hand tightly as the room filled with that rapid, rhythmic sound, like tiny wings fluttering against our future. His eyes filled with tears. That's our baby, he whispered. Yes, I said, squeezing his hand. That's our baby. He kissed my forehead gently. I want to meet them, he said. I want them to know I tried. I want them to know I love them even before they existed. I cried softly, resting my head on his shoulder. They will, I whispered. They will know. One evening, after a long day of appointments, Braden and I sat outside under the gentle glow of the porch light. Fireflies flickered over the grass. The air smelled like warm earth and distant rain. Braden rested his head on my shoulder. Liv, he whispered. Yes, thank you for coming for me that morning. I closed my eyes. I'll always come for you. He was quiet for a moment. I didn't understand what it meant to be loved. Not really. I always thought love was what you gave others, but I never let myself receive it. Not fully. He took a shaky breath. But when you and Catherine found me, something changed. For the first time, I realized that love isn't about being strong. It's about being seen, completely seen, even in weakness. I felt tears gather again, and I want to be worthy of that kind of love, he whispered, even if I'm learning how one slow day at a time. I turned to him, brushing a tear from his cheek. You already are. He closed his eyes, leaning into my touch. I'm scared, he admitted softly. Still scared. I know, I whispered. But you're not alone anymore, he nodded. And for the first time in so long, he let himself rest, not just physically, but emotionally. In the safety of being loved, being held, being found. Life wasn't perfect now. It wasn't magically healed, but it was honest, real. Braden still had bad days. I still woke up afraid sometimes. Catherine still carried her own battles. But we were a family, one that had cracked, fallen apart, and slowly, carefully begun to rebuild itself, piece by fragile piece. And sometimes in the quiet hours before sunrise, Braden would place his hand on my stomach and whisper, I'm fighting for you, both of you, and I won't disappear again. I believed him, because this time, he wasn't saying it from fear, he was saying it from hope. And hope, even in the smallest amount, can change everything. The months that followed were quieter than the chaos that came before them. Not easier, just different. Life settled into a softer rhythm, one built on slow mornings, careful steps, and honest conversations. Braden's illness didn't disappear. Some days he grew weaker. Some days he managed a little more strength than we expected. But every day, he tried. And every day, I saw him choose us. He went to therapy. He took his medication. He spoke openly with Catherine. He held my hands when the fear became too much, and I held his when the sadness found him. We weren't pretending anymore. There were no more secrets floating between us, no quiet shadows waiting to grow into storms. Just truth, just love, just days, some good, some hard, all meaningful. Our daughter, Grace, came into the world on a rainy morning. The kind of morning where the sky looks silver and soft, as if the whole world is holding its breath. Braden held her in his arms. His hands shook, but he didn't let go. He cried silently, tears sliding down his cheeks as he whispered her name over and over again. Grace, Grace, you're here. I watched him, and for the first time, I saw something stronger than fear in his eyes. I saw purpose. I saw love. I saw a man who had walked through darkness and found a reason to keep moving. Catherine stood beside us, wiping her eyes, smiling through her tears. She looks like you, she whispered to him. He shook his head gently. No, she looks like hope. Something in my heart broke open at those words, not in pain this time, but in gratitude. Deep, quiet gratitude. As Grace grew, Braden changed in small but profound ways. He laughed more. He asked for help when he needed it. He allowed himself to rest without guilt. He allowed Catherine to support him without shame. He allowed me to love him without walls blocking my way. There were still hard days, nights when his breathing grew shallow, mornings when his legs refused to respond, appointments where the news wasn't always hopeful. But there were also beautiful days, days when Grace fell asleep on his chest, days when he read to her in a soft, steady voice, days when Catherine joined us for dinner and the house was full of gentle noise instead of silence. And every evening, Braden would whisper to me, "Thank you for finding me that morning. Thank you for not letting me go." And every evening, I answered the same, "I'll always find you," because I would, in every lifetime, in every world, in every storm. People often say love is easy, but real love, the kind that survives fear, illness, secrets, and breaking points, is not easy at all. It is patient, it is forgiving, it is steady when everything else falls apart. Real love doesn't only stay when things are beautiful. It stays when things are fragile. It stays when the person you love is drowning in fear. It stays when the world becomes quiet and cold. Real love searches for you when you disappear. Real love holds your hand when you shake. Real love sits beside you in silence and doesn't leave. Real love sees your broken pieces and chooses to stay anyway. Sometimes late at night, when Grace is asleep and the house is still, I sit beside Brayden and watch him breathe. His breaths are softer now than they once were. A little slower, a little weaker, but they are here. He is here. And I remember the night he whispered that he didn't want me to watch him fall apart. I remember the morning he left his wheelchair by the woods. I remember the cold panic in my chest when I thought he might never come home. I remember the weight of fear he carried, a weight he never should have carried alone. And I remember how love, quiet, real, steadfast love brought him back. Not healed, not cured, but present, alive, trying, hoping, and that is enough. If life has taught me anything, it is this. Love is not about perfect people. It is about imperfect people choosing each other again and again, even when life gets heavy. It is about honesty, about letting the people you love carry your fears with you, about believing that your weakness does not make you unworthy of being loved. Love does not disappear when health fades. Love does not break when fear rises. Love does not leave when the road becomes difficult. Love stays. It stays through storms. It stays through secrets. It stays through mornings when the world feels too heavy. And sometimes love finds you sitting alone under a pine tree and gently brings you home.